Can you give tips on supporting autistic teens as they grow into adulthood? Puberty can massively impact an autistic teen's experience of their sensory issues and their sensory needs. They can become more intense and unbearable. Thinking in particular on that topic, when autistic teens who menstruate have their first period, that can be really unsettling and it can impact their sensory needs. They might not know how to talk about it or how to handle it. I would recommend trying to find the most sensory friendly period resources for your child that you possibly can. I would personally recommend the period pants. Having tried most options, I find that those are least likely to impact my sensory needs. I would also like to mention that obviously during puberty, your child is likely to start exploring their sexuality, and autistic teens are more vulnerable and perhaps less aware of social cues around these areas. So I would definitely recommend that you look at some resources connected to autistic teenagers and sexuality, and I'm going to ask the team to put some resources in the description box of this video. Typically, but not always, autistic teens will grow into independence at a slower rate than is expected. And that's okay. I think making that okay is really important, and perhaps extending the expectations of how long you might need to support them for. But if they do have capacity, it's important to start teaching them life skills, getting them involved in chores, so you've got them doing household tasks, starting to learn to devise their own schedules. Perhaps if they're revising for their GCSEs, you don't make them a revision schedule, you sit with them and you help them to make one so they know how to make one in future. And another area of independence, which we might not consider as parents, is that they're going to need to go out there in the world as autistic adults, ready to advocate for their own needs, perhaps in their career paths or their relationships. My autistic teenager recently took part in a work experience. She was doing a full week in a primary school, and on the first day she was asked to clean up the paint pots, and she can't do that because of her sensory needs, so she left early and said that she was not going to go back to the work experience placement. And I gave her two options. I said, you can not go back and I will phone up and I will cover it for you, or you can go back in, you can talk to the teacher about your autism and the fact that you have sensory needs and ask her to assign you different tasks. And I think if you choose the second option, you're going to feel better about it. So she did that and she went back, and the teacher considered her access needs for the rest of the week, and it was a really successful week and she felt really proud. And I feel like that was an opportunity where I could have just swooped in and saved her, but instead I gave her the empowerment to deal with this herself. Communication can be more difficult as your child becomes a teenager, and it can be easy to have days or whole weekends pass with them up in their bedroom playing a video game and you haven't spoken to them. And this means that they might be also more likely to hide any problems that they have, like mental health issues. And so with my teenagers, I've tried to make sure that I still keep talking to them. And sometimes these conversations take place at times that feel less pressured for them, like in car journeys or side by side doing some cooking together. And I'm not afraid to ask the difficult questions, and I also make sure that they feel that if something comes up, like a mental health problem or like a vulnerability in the world, that if they come to me with it, there's never going to be criticism or judgment. I'm just going to be there to help them, so that line of communication is kept open even on the most difficult topics. I think it's important to mention that autistic teenagers can also be vulnerable, and so it's really important that we make sure that they're educated about these areas where they might experience vulnerabilities. So that means teaching things like no means no, and what to do if they find themselves in a difficult situation. So there's the really obvious red flags that you need to teach them about, but there's also more subtle red flags, like the friend who isn't really a friend and is maybe taking advantage of them, and how to spot the signs that these things are happening so that they can learn to empower themselves to navigate life and through these situations.